Hi, Sarah and Kristen. We can wait a minute or two for a couple more to join, but we are live and recording, just so you all know.
Thanks, Chloe. I'm having trouble with my camera, but I'm trying to
Let
work
me,
out why
okay.
it's not working.
You should have the ability to use your camera. I just checked the settings.
Okay, thanks. Let me
Yeah.
try it again.
I'm hoping this new format with the webinar will work out.
Isn't technology great?
Wonderful.
Okay. I'm just happy I don't have to teach like this anymore. That was tough.
I'm sure that was emotionally draining.
Well, I think part of it was like I'd have like 12 kids here and then like 12 kids over here, and I like they're doing a lab, so I have to like make sure that they're being safe, and then it's just like, well, I can't, it's hard to keep you engaged to make sure you're paying attention and make sure they're being safe.
I'm just going to leave and come back in and try it and see if the camera works.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, Jen, how's it going?
I'm good. Looks like we're live.
We are.
I'm just going to be listening like I did the last time. I'm going to have to jump off for another meeting as well.
Sounds good. Yeah. Hopefully everyone figures out the new, like getting into the new link.
Chloe, did you get that email from Dr. Ritchie?
I did. Yes.
I didn't want to respond just in case of quorum. But if you could forward that to Kristen,
Sure.
and she's the chair of this one. Thank you.
It's just an idea that right now.
What she presented.
Hello.
Hi, Shannon.
Happy Tuesday.
I know. Happy Tuesday to you too. Did anyone do anything fun for St. Patrick's Day?
I got eye surgery.
Well, it sounds less fun.
It was not fun. I do not recommend it. But thank God it's modern medicine. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of their surgeries now have really short recovery times.
Yeah, I mean, I took off this morning because I was down for the count, but I feel okay now. I mean, I walked out with no patch on or anything. It's all lasers and it's very crazy.
I did the laser, like LASIK eye surgery when I was like 23, and like you're just awake the whole time and you can watch them do this, but from a perspective that's new.
Yeah, no, it's and I think I've had to do it twice because I have tears in my retina. But I don't think the anesthesia drops were working, so I felt it a lot more, and I was like, this is not comfortable.
I teach a whole unit on the eye, so kids are always very like, oh my God, and you can see the laser? Like, what does it look like? I'm like, I don't know, it looks like light.
Yeah, it was a green light. It's a green light that's shooting, and you feel pressure because it's actually
like
poking into your eye. Yeah.
Mine was like a violet, so a little higher energy laser, but I didn't feel anything.
Wow. Amazing.
10-minute, like, no lie, 10 minutes or less. And then when they put your cornea back on, it's like, wow, I can actually see everything in focus now.
We are live, like I said.
Great.
Anne did indicate that she'd be coming, but I don't know if I haven't received any emails that anyone's having trouble joining. Looks like Sarah is having trouble as well. So we don't yet have quorum.
That's all right. We can hang out for a little bit.
Okay.
I just got the email from Cynthia. So depending on what we have for time, I figure if we could, I'll add it to the agenda under, and I just had the agenda. I don't know if we're going to get to items requiring action if we are delayed in getting started. And then we have the email that just came in from Kaylin, and then the email from Dr. Ritchie. So I don't know if we'll get to everything, but we can try.
What is the final size of this committee?
That is a good question.
I believe there's
6 maybe? So Mimi,
6.
Sarah,
Yes.
So we
Anne,
need 4 for a quorum.
Rebecca. And was Dr. Ritchie originally expressed interest in this committee, but I didn't know if she was
Dr.
actually.
Ritchie is on the other committee, but I've
Okay.
been copying both the chair and the vice chair of the full committee on both of them, which is why she said, I'm not on this committee, but since I'm
Mhm.
copied, why don't I
Yeah.
can share some input. Rebecca and Catherine cannot attend, but so we would need
Anne.
Anne, and then Jen, if you'd like to participate to maintain quorum, but I don't know if you're available to do that.
I mean, I could potentially start, and then I have to jump off for an additional meeting at 4:20, and then I can always come back towards the end of this meeting, depending on how quickly that goes.
So knowing that at this point we can't really take any votes, it might be helpful if we review some of the ideas that have been kicking around, and make sure that we just start discussing some of the options. Sarah, have you been able to get your microphone and everything working?
Yeah, my microphone is working, but my camera says that I have no camera access, and I've tried it both in my docking station and just with my laptop. And when I first logged in, I had camera access. No one else was in the meeting, and then it was almost like I was the host of the meeting. And then I lost my camera access once people started joining. But I'm here, and I have the Word documents in front of me.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'll do a shared screen and we can just start going over some of the things. Give me 1 second so that you can see the actual Word document and not just my general emails.
You should have share screen access as well.
I do. I just wanted to make sure I pull up the right screen.
Mhm.
All right. So here we go. So last time we had looked at the joint superintendent SDE observation, which was my idea about once people are graduated, they're in the classroom, if they don't have a bridge in their content area. Oh, actually, can everyone see my screen okay? No. Okay, well,
No.
is that better?
No.
No. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I always have trouble with Microsoft Teams. It's interesting.
Nope. It's doing something where it like adjusts the size of the screen and then comes back. Chloe, if you would be able to share that alternative content document, and we'll just start with page 2. So while Kaylin was at our last meeting of the board, I was asking Kaylin, who works at the State Department of Education and Certification, like talent agency or a talent part. And she clarified that even though people had a really great idea about being able to leverage, like making an additional team module, she did clarify that team falls under a different, it has a different legal law that sets what the content of team is. So when I had been looking on page 2, this joint superintendent Department of Education observation, that's one of the challenges that Kaylin brought up, was that, you know, this would benefit prospective teachers, but it wouldn't necessarily be able to leverage team without having team be legally rewritten. So I think in terms of ideas, this is one that can be considered as an idea on its own, but the suggestion about team can't really be considered, at least as far as Kaylin was describing to me. So if we want to move on to the next one, we can start.
I would just say that I think team is on the way I read the legislation for what falls under the jurisdiction, if you will, of this board. I think team, because team was a means for advancing your certification.
Right.
So therefore, I would say we have an opportunity, if we thought that team fit into this bigger puzzle, to rethink that. It would require a proposed change to statute because it's named, but not all of the specifics necessarily. So it'd be a modification to statute, but it would fall, I think, in line with what we're trying to do in like the spirit of a comprehensive system for teacher certification. So I wouldn't rule like team out, I guess, is all I would say.
That's fair. Or if, you know, team occurs once you have your initial certificate for the first 3 years, this might be something like team. You're completing one content module and maybe it's just not called team, right?
Well, the other committee is looking, because we have to decide how to advance someone from initial to professional certification now. And since team was a step along that journey, we are talking about team at that table. So I think these two things would intersect. I love this proposal, and it's kind of similar to what I think Cynthia was starting to recommend. I think where we might hear there's still something, and this is where I'm not completely clear, is the requirements for an EPP, the burden of proof on them to ensure a candidate has demonstrated content mastery. Does this circumvent their ability to do that? And if so, what can we do to put that concern aside for EPPs?
Right. Because I know Anne had brought up last time, like, how do we get the data back to the EPP? So could there be something like I know EPPs have the secure version of EdInsight, the website. If that's something where they'd be able to see how their graduates, you know, even if they didn't pass praxis the first time or the second time, if they get certified in this alternative method, we could leverage that existing platform to get that data to them. All right. So Chloe, would you be able to go to the Praxis 2 bridge page? I actually can't see your screen at all, actually.
Can anyone see my screen?
Yes, it's like
Okay.
a split screen. This isn't the
Sure.
document that was sent out with the 3 or 4 proposals on it, though. This is a different document.
Okay. That's what I was unsure about, but I didn't want to interrupt. Let me.
Yeah, because I can't see. I could only see the logo that said CC.
Oh, That's unfortunate. Okay. Trying to
Oh,
work out the kinks.
we have Anne. Hi, Anne.
She waved.
Anne, I don't know if you're trying to speak, but you are on mute. Okay. But if you're just joining us, we're at this point not enough people. Oh no, she signed off. I was gonna say we're not at enough people for a quorum, so I was figuring not to waste our availability and be able to look over the other proposals.
Sure. Am I sharing what Cynthia shared or what Kaylin shared?
I was gonna have you put up the alternate minimum content Word document, the V2
Sure.
Word document.
Good. That's what I've been looking at. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I started compiling all the ideas in one place so we have them to look at right in a row.
Okay. I'm sharing right now, and hopefully everyone can see it.
Yes, I can see it.
Oh, as long as you guys can see it, because I have the document open too, and mine is
Oh.
not showing up at all.
That is so weird.
I don't know. But in any case, we're looking at Praxis 2 Bridge, which Ajit had come in and done a presentation for from the SDE. What are people's feelings on the Praxis 2 Bridge right now?
Makes sense to me. I think we should expand. I mean, it sounds like the only limitation is that Praxis hasn't come up with the equivalent for other content areas yet. So as they do, I would support extending this to those content areas.
It sounded like they might have something in the works when we talked to him after the last board meeting. And I think he was willing to come to either this meeting or another meeting to have more conversations around that. So he might be a good resource to tap into to find out like what they're overall. And I'm not sure if, I'll just leave it there.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good idea also.
Yes. So in my notes, it says that because I have Ajit's longer PDF of his presentation or the data from his presentation, that they have several additional Praxis 2s they're looking to continue to expand that would be available in September of this year. With an additional challenge being Praxis 2 is ETS. So Pearson and other testing groups like AFSTIL or the early childhood that aren't necessarily run by ETS might not have a bridge available or might not be willing to participate in one, especially with like such a state with such a small sample size. So I also really like the Praxis 2 bridge and would support if they expanded it. In addition to whatever they're looking for September. I don't know if they'd be willing to open conversations with Pearson or other testing agencies. Give me 1 second. I have an alarm going off.
I also think that we have as a potential agenda item for the April meeting to have Jeet come and present on the data for the past 6 months of them using this ETS bridges, which would provide us with some, information to either support the work that you guys are doing within that conversation.
That would be really helpful.
Yeah, I think anytime he can come or CPRL to build our background knowledge is helpful.
All right. Any other thoughts on Praxis 2 Bridge?
I think my only thought would be if there was a possibility to expand on the points within. So I'm not sure exactly what he said statistically the points were. like let's say it's 2 points within passing the subtest. If there is a possibility to maybe broaden that slightly, not overly, but if there is any discussion around possibly broadening that a little bit to allow additional people to just focus in on that subtest.
And that might be a good thing to have as a recommendation from our committee. So if our ad hoc committee includes it in a report of ways that we approve for alternate minimum assessment, then we could include other suggestions or asks for SDE to look into. All right, so next on the list was the bachelor's degree or higher in content area. I took this one from the CPRO recommendation from their second presentation. One thing that differs about this one, ooh, sorry, the alarm again. One thing that is different about this one than the one that's from the raised bill is that CPRO originally only recommended this for the 6-degree areas in which the correlation between the teacher's degree and the student outcomes were significant. So one of the drawbacks that I'm really concerned with is if this were our recommendation, it creates this hierarchy of, the STEM teachers for which this correlation was positive. So the math, chemistry, biology, earth science, general science, and physics, I don't want to make a 2-tier system where STEM teachers have this role and everybody else doesn't.
Well, I think there is a distinction in terms of relativity with shortage areas. Like if we're trying to build more flexible pathways to certification, especially in places where we have pain points of shortages, and the evidence shows this positive correlation, this is just one more way to get that really high demand subject area person into the profession. So I like the fact that it's backed by research and evidence that there is a correlation, and it's just a path for a particularly hard. I mean, and it's not cutting off flexibilities for we just talked about a bridge option that's only available for some content areas. So this is a counterpoint for a different set of content areas. So it's sort of this menu, right, that we're offering, and some of it's going to apply to some content areas and not others. So I like this. If anything, I would broaden it and include other content areas, even though maybe the correlation isn't always there. But I think starting with this could be it could be a good test to see how many people even take advantage of it as a flexibility.
Sarah, what do you think of this one?
Just a point of clarification. A candidate who fails the first attempt could demonstrate minimum content knowledge by submitting evidence of a relevant bachelor's degree or higher. So that's all they would have to do is say, I have a degree in biology. Okay.
But it'd be more than just saying it. They'd have to show evidence of it. So they have to submit their transcript.
And is there any, within the transcript, are there any grade expectations?
So with the proposal from CPRL, no. And there was also no, I had mentioned currency because, a bachelor's degree that I might have got in the early 2000s might not be something I am familiar with now in 2025. So it doesn't have any limitation of when that bachelor's degree is in proximity to when you begin teaching.
Right.
Another worry I might have for this one is for EPPs. Let's say I have a student that they know they have a biology degree, right? So then they go to Praxis 1 knowing they don't have to pass it. And so will that start to skew EPP's data because the students aren't taking the assessment seriously? Um,
Hmm. Hmm. Well, and back to your original example, say it was a person who got a biology or a chemistry degree in 2000, and their transcript reflected that they had passed with, you know, expected grades. And they also had relevant job experience. So the fact that they got their degree in 2000, could that be offset by the fact that they were working in a chemistry field or a biology field, which gave them continued experience in the subject matter, not
Mhm.
not teaching experience, however.
Right, kind of like the requirements for the ARC program, where
Mm-hmm.
like because I had a physics degree and worked in a lab, then I was able to go through this accelerated ARC program. So in this document, I'm actually just adding in notes, but since it's a Word document, you won't be able to see them. So I'm adding in, Shannon, your comment about how like the Praxis 2 bridge was for elementary teachers. So this might open a new path for secondary teachers, and also alleviate kind of like the barriers for
A
people
critical
getting,
shortage area. Yeah. Yeah. And I also think to the concern that this could substitute in this instant in these content areas for the Praxis, like they won't take the Praxis 2 as seriously because they could just get the cert with the bachelor's degree evidence. This has greater correlation with efficacy than the Praxis 2 does. So in some ways, this could almost come first, but we're just
Mm-hmm.
saying for the sake of consistency, everybody starts with the state approved content mastery test, which tends to be Praxis 2. And then this is the follow-up option if you don't pass. So I guess I'm not so concerned with that being what might happen as an unintended consequence. I do wonder about the grade, like if CEPRL would have advice on some minimum GPA average in the major that you'd need to have. Because if you got all D's in
Right,
biology, that's probably not a great thing.
right. I would
right,
think,
and
yeah.
these get degrees. So maybe something like a B average in the courses in your major or something along those lines. Because if you can show that you've been getting a B average in your college level physics course, I can imagine that the Praxis 2 is easier than that.
But I think with testing, it's hard because you're also trying to solve for people who just have test anxiety and
Right.
they may know the content and they just bomb the assessment. So I don't know that it always um, makes like the most logical sequence.
Right. And then
I'm
so
curious these other I mean, there's other states that do this too, so we could learn from them about how they apply it in practice. Um,
yes. And then Sarah, you had mentioned like relevant job experience. I just received this email like an hour ago, but there is another pathway or waiver program that the SDE is currently doing that it already accounts for degree and job experience. So once we get more information on that, I think job experience, working in, a field related to your major, that might be a thing that the state is already doing. So that is something I'm currently looking for more information in right now.
Mm.
well, and that's there's two certifications that are issued based on job experience, the 090 and the 098, for working in the tech ed system or working in a comprehensive school system. And certain in industry areas get credit for years of work experience. It doesn't actually tie to um, education at all. It's all work experience. And then they do not have to enroll in an EPP at all. So they're almost outside the construct of what we're talking about, because this is presuming an EPP is in the mix, those candidates don't have to do the EPP at all. They have to meet 3 course requirements over the duration of 3 years, and then they get their certification. So we could talk about them in parallel almost as like,
Yeah.
would you want to open that path to more
Mm.
professions? Right now it's limited to the trades, law enforcement, public safety. We're talking about it relative to healthcare professions more and more. But there's a real opportunity there, I think. You just have to be careful, like how far you take, like how far do you want to take it kind of thing.
Right.
So that's interesting, Shannon, because I've been thinking a lot about people who have lost their job recently because they're in the government sector. And I will not be surprised if a lot of people who were doing government service work, even if they could go back, may decide not to go back in the current climate. And
Mhm.
so that's a whole cadre of very experienced people who might be a great English or a great history teacher or a great science teacher, depending on what their government service position was. And I was actually like, wow, wouldn't it be great if we could recruit people like that into the field if they show evidence that they could be a good high school or middle school teacher.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, because we work in the workforce, so we're very, like, I'll just be honest, we're very open and accepting of real hands-on work experience as counting for the equivalent of academic experience, especially if it's in particular fields. I know it doesn't touch on the pedagogy aspect of it as
Right.
directly, but that's something we could build into team or other experiences that give on the job. I mean, this is something in other industries that happens all the time. They get screened in for like attitude and aptitude, and then they get the skills that they need on the job. And so is that a direction when we want to try to appeal to career changers? And to your point, Sarah, I think there's going to be a huge glut of individuals who are very talented who could be great candidates for the teaching profession. And how do we clear the path as smoothly for them as possible without taking away standards? But I think where that might, I know we lost Anne, but that will that is a different avenue than going through the EPP channel, which could be a point of concern. I think there's plenty to go around and we need both, but I think it's going to be a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Did you talk about the first proposal when I was kind of going in and out of getting into teams? The joint superintendent DOE proposal?
I figured since we talked about it for about half an hour in the last ad hoc committee, I
Oh,
kind
all
of
right.
just I kind
No,
of summarized this one.
that's
But if
fine.
you
I
want
missed
to,
that meeting, so that's fine. I just
oh,
wanted to know. So I'm glad. No, I read it and I was very intrigued by it. So I'm glad that it hasn't been ruled out, that it was just previously discussed. Thank you.
yeah. So one thing that came up in that discussion originally was there was a lot of interest in leveraging the district's existing teacher evaluation plan because
Mm-hmm.
those evaluation plans already have a supervisor who is doing frequent observations and giving the teacher feedback and making sure that they're meeting the district standards for teaching. And if they already have that in place, people had suggested, well, could we use team? And there was just a discussion over whether team is applicable, because if you're under a DSAP, you go on team under a DSAP. But could there be some other content module that people do if they didn't pass the praxis or other standardized test? Could they do like the Zero with Team module to show content area mastery while still earning time for TRB and still earning an income?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, do we have any more thoughts about the bachelor's degree with the limited content areas that was recommended by CPRL? Seeing none, the next one I took from the language of Raised Bill 1392. And the suggestion in the bill, and I know the bill was a placeholder for where we could put our recommendations in, but in that one, they had suggested just bachelor's or degree or higher in subject area with no limitation on which subjects. So this would be page 6 of the Word document.
And is the portfolio option focused more for secondary or content specific teachers, or would it also apply to
The
elementary
portfolio
teachers?
option I'll actually get to later. So this
Oh, I'm
was
sorry. I was looking at number 4. I thought that's what
yeah,
we were talking about.
This is
Oh.
3B because
Yep.
CPRO's recommendation was just to do the bachelor's degree in
I
specific
see it.
content areas, and then the
Mhm.
raised bill expanded that to all content areas.
Mm.
So this one has some of the same drawbacks that I saw for 3A, bachelor's degree in limited subjects, in that it doesn't take into account currency of the degree work, that most other states do require some sort of content area assessment. So it kind of put us out of line with what other states are doing to show competency with content. And I had also listed that some certification programs don't provide a bachelor's degree, and some certification areas like elementary, your undergraduate degree doesn't necessarily match up with your certification area. So it had some of the same drawbacks I saw as 3A. What are other people's thoughts? Because I'm just going to add in your notes as we go.
And this is a bachelor's degree, not from an EPP, but from any university or college. Is that correct?
Well, so the raised bill had it as an institution of higher education accredited by the Board of Regents of Higher Education or Office of Higher Education or a regionally accredited institution.
Mm-hmm.
So, and because we don't have a quorum, we're just having discussions about the different proposals, and I'm adding people's notes into the minimum content area document so that we can see each other's thoughts.
I could not get unmuted. I don't know what was going on, and I couldn't get uncameraed. So I had to email both you and Chloe saying, I can't get on, guys. You know, like that's why I raised my hand and then left. I was hoping somebody would figure out that that I was just unable to be attached. The bachelor's degree or higher in content area, there is no content area for elementary, so it can be any bachelor's degree.
Yes.
If that was that the question? And someone said, is it the EPP doing it? No, I mean, we have graduate programs where people come to us from any university and come to do the graduate work, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I only heard the end of the question, but I think if we're asking, do we want to use the bachelor's degree as the minimum content assessment? There are a lot of drawbacks because of the variation in what people, you know, have in their background when they come to us and where they went to school and, you know, what grade level and what grade it is and what's the overall GPA. I mean, there's a lot of issues that go on. We do look at that as an EPP, to confirm some knowledge base, especially upon admission, you know, but the it isn't sufficient for CAPE. I know that.
I didn't think so either.
It's not.
But I was hoping someone from an EPP would come on because CAPE is not my area that I'm super familiar with. So I
Right.
had started adding in drawbacks or pros or cons that I could
Right.
think of. So
I mean, there is research to suggest that if you have a math or science background, which was in that report from Ajit's office earlier on, that has a strong correlation with a minimum knowledge base that's good ultimately. But again, you know, having done this for, 20 years or more, there's such variation when people come from different universities, even when they have, and most graduate programs won't accept anything less than B minus. So you have to have that in the area, even as the undergraduate, to really count. If you see a lot of C's and D's, you're going to start to question whether or not the content is there anyway.
Yeah, we talked about that with recommendation number 3, that you'd want the submission of the transcript didn't seem like it was enough. There'd have to be parameters within the transcript around grades and which courses needed to have which grades.
And we've even had to, for CAPE, request in order to make it for the SPAs. It depends on whether you're doing a SPA, a specialty program area. Like you actually have to get from the other university a course description. So it gets really complicated because then you need a course description to see whether or not the content covers what the SPA requires, or even what you're interested in having the candidate cover. And courses have all kinds of names and then not necessarily similar content, so it's a very broad area and it has a lot of variables. It won't meet, CAPE wants content minimum to be more explicit. They accept praxis, but this, the reliability of what the data is not strong.
Right, because for CAPE, it's reliability, validity, and there was a third. What's the
triangulation? Usually they want more than one source of data. So even if you had, like, we'll use the GPA as a source of data, but it's not sufficient. So we'll say, okay, the person had an undergraduate major in math and they had, a 3.2, but they also passed praxis and they also did whatever 15 credits in our program in graduate level math. You need all those different things really to show often to have it pass muster.
I think, Anne, that really raises a good point, that whatever proposal we land on, while I want to make it more available for qualified people to become teachers, I think there's got to be a couple of data points that you're looking at when you're making that determination.
It has to be. That's why originally I had said praxis is a good baseline. And that's strong data for CAPE because of the standardization. But after that, I really feel you can have a couple of options that EPPs will draw on. So we're looking at two things. We're looking at substantial data for CAPE to show minimum content. And then also the other idea is alternative pathways for people to show that they know the content beyond the praxis. I do think the bridge has already been accepted. So for elementary, that's reasonable. But the bachelor's may be one small thing, but even within that, you know, do you want parameters? Do you want to say only courses that have a B minus or better, only overall GPAs of 3.0 or whatever? I mean, because you're going to get people who come to you who, you know, either it's a very old transcript, which in some of the more, you know, relevant areas of, you know, the sciences and stuff, it may not be relevant anymore, you know. We find that in special ed a lot. People have had special ed courses from many years ago.
And laws change.
And laws change, and how we work with that population has changed. And so it's really hard to say that's relevant. I think the EPPs do a pretty good job of really attempting to maximize how they assess content. I really do. And we're talking about a really small group here. Remember, it's like less than 10% for the most part. A few more in more certain populations.
This too, it was only 77 tests that were never passed in that 1 year. So yes, there might be a few more people for AIFSTIL and Foundations of Reading, etc. But we're likely talking less than
Very
100
small.
people.
Yeah.
And I think for the bachelor's degree, if it was just a bachelor's degree, that, like you said, I would worry about the currency of the degree, whether or not it's relatively like that content is actually what needs to be taught. And I think this would put us out of line with what other states are doing. Most other states have something more than just a bachelor's degree, minus Minnesota and Iowa.
Yeah,
And
there's
then,
only two, right?
right.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know if those are necessarily what we want to copy. And then, and I had brought this up for, you know, the discussion about when it's the bachelor's degree just within the 6 fields in which the degree shows a positive correlation. But would EPPs worry about their student performance on Praxis if the students know they don't actually have to pass it, they just have to take it? Would you worry about your students' performance on the standardized tests if they knew that, well, whatever, my bachelor's degree is my backup?
We do, because there are issues right now with that. We require a TPA, which is not required by the state. Certain states, if you have out-of-state students becoming teachers, a lot of them may not require Praxis, but Connecticut does, or we do as a program for our data in order to meet CAPE requirements, even though they're moving out of state. So there are issues around that. The way that we do it, connect with it, is we've tied some of the tests, for example, to course completion, not program completion, but course completion. So in order for you to finish a certain course, part of the course is taking, for example, Foundations of Reading. You need to take it and do within a certain now, do you have to pass it to pass the course? No, but the likelihood is that most of the students really do take it, you know, pretty seriously. There are a few who just sort of fill it out. Now, what we do with EdTPA is if they just submit garbage, which they almost rarely never do, then what we do is if the grade comes back and it's really poor, we have an alternative, almost like a portfolio assessment that they have to do if it goes below a certain level. So there's sort of a sanction for not doing well. So you can set it up that way. But yeah, you're absolutely right. If it's too loosely open, and I think Catherine mentioned this in the last meeting, kids just sit for it and then walk away because they know it really doesn't count, you know. So we try to really talk to our candidates about the fact that you've chosen to come to a high quality program. Part of that is recognizing, you know, that these are quality measures, not only for the individual, but for the whole program. And we want to be able to continuously evaluate the program and maintain the quality. Usually as an educator, they kind of get that, you know, but it takes addressing it for sure.
Um,
Complicated.
it is kind
Anne, I was curious, do you collect data on how many of your students are right out of undergraduate bachelor's and how many are people who've had a career and are coming back to get a master's degree?
Do we keep data? Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, we know the graduate. Well, first of all of our students are graduates, so it's a 4+1. We don't have bachelors going into, we only have the masters.
No, I understand that, but you have people with bachelor's degrees coming to you, and then you have people
Yes.
with bachelor's degrees and, 10 or 15 years of experience, say, in another field who've decided, I want to become a teacher now.
Yeah. I don't think we have enough of an N of people coming after 15 years of experience to really make a generalization about whether that works or not, because it really is a small, at least for us, a very small number of people that do that. Most of the time, however, the more mature students who have a strong, background, it's more the students who have kind of spent 10 or 15 years sort of on the fringes of teaching, maybe done some power work, maybe done some subbing, kind of have a mixed background of academic work. That can be more predictive, I think, of problems down the road. Again, we support them. We try to do everything we can. Sometimes technology is an issue. I mean, it's interesting to see how much has changed over 15 years when people come back, just LMS, just trying to learn either Blackboard or Canvas or whatever is really hard. So no, I guess long answer to a short question, I don't think we have enough of a group to really make any generalizations on that. The one thing I wanted to add, and I'm sorry I wasn't in earlier, and then I'll be quiet. The piece about having the number one with the students, with the superintendent and, sort of the district getting involved. I'm not sure how that would work with the EPP because the EPP is the one who makes the recommendation for certification. So there are going to be issues around how do we take somebody else's assessment and translate it into our own assessment to bring it up to the state. That I have a feeling that's complicated and is going to be an issue for EPPs. So I'm just sort of letting you guys know that we sign off on who gets certified. And part of that is signing off on their clinical experience, not just their academics, right?
Mm-hmm.
So who signs off,
Right. So I have an EPP question for you. Because you guys have the portal for EdInsight where you can sign in and see private data, would that be something that, let's say you have someone who graduated from their EPP program but hasn't passed the praxis, they're out working, etc. If the state dashboard was able to give you data that, like, okay, this teacher passed the content area assessment 2 years into their teaching experience, and you were able to access it through the EdInsight portal, would that be a good feedback mechanism that EPPs would be interested in using?
I don't know how we would follow that. I mean, the student themselves would have to come back to the EPP and say, I finally passed praxis, which happens
Right.
rarely, but right? Is that what you're saying?
No, so I mean it more automated. So instead of saying that, like, Eric has to come
Oh,
back in his third year of teaching, if it was published on a secure website and you could see all your graduates and um, how they did on either whatever alternative minimum content assessment we do, um, and whether they became certified, whether they're still teaching. If we could leverage Ed Insight for you to get that automatically, would that be helpful?
um, well, we get the original score on praxis from ETS anyway, so we would know that they hadn't passed.
Mhm.
And then typically when they retake, because we're the ones writing up the certification and that's all they're waiting on, once we would get it again from ETS saying, okay, now they passed. And then, so I'm not sure, it might just be redundant if that makes sense. What I think we could use the data for is really following up it, like down the road. I mean, I like the language I think Shannon was talking about, like 2 or 3 years in, we continue to look and see how well whatever we decide works.
Mhm.
I think looking at outcomes is the way to know that, right? So
Yes.
that's where the rubber hits the road. So if we have a program in which either students are not being retained or they're not getting hired, or they're not staying for more than a year, that tells you something that's important. We could then backtrack and say, what did they do to show content, minimums, or did they not pass praxis and do an alternative? And did that ultimately, was that ultimately they didn't stick around for teaching? That says something, it's not a
Right.
direct correlation, but it tells us something about the outcomes of we want teachers who are successful and stay and so I think looking at the data for that reason, so that we can continuously put out guidelines about what's really good to have a teacher do to maintain to have their initial quality, but also have them retained and successful in the classroom. I mean,
Yeah.
does that make sense?
Especially since our board, once this very busy 2 years is up, our long-term goal is we're supposed to reassess whether or
Right.
not our methods were successful every 2 years. So we're definitely going to need the data with the outcomes, because if you have a person that, even if they pass praxis, right? If you have a person who graduates from a program and is only in the classroom for 4 months and quits teaching, if that's happening regularly, that'd be a concern.
Or even a
Right?
couple of years. And we already have programs that the data is out there with that. We actually do. Now,
Yeah, that's the Ed Insight, like, secure portal, right? Where just the EPP can sign in.
where you can see how many actually completers. You can see how many are working in 1 year. You
Yeah.
can see how many are working in 2 years out and 4 years out, all of which is data that we have to have for CAPE anyway.
Mhm.
So all of that data is strong data to sort of evaluate the EPPs, but I do think in the case of content, the EPPs are in the best position to make the assessment of whether or not a candidate has the minimum content necessary to be successful. And again, these tests are not predictive of teaching ability. It's really about content. And I think that clarification is important too. There's a difference between knowing your content and being able to teach. And it's a different assessment. It's an assessment of just, do you know your stuff? And there's multiple ways to do that, but I think the ways that are reliable and valid are pretty straightforward with Praxis, and then alternatives if you need them. To me, it's kind of straightforward, but keeping the responsibility to the EPP because they're the ones who ultimately sign off on it, but they are then also the ones who are responsible for the outcome.
All right, so we're at like 0 minutes left, but
Sorry.
I know that as we were talking, I sounded like there was a lot of support for option 2, and we can definitely discuss all of the options more. And I think I know I received an email from Cynthia with an idea she'd like to discuss at the next ad hoc committee meeting. I know I just received some clarification from Kaylin about what the state is already doing for waivers, which is really interesting. And I think we should be able to leverage and use some of the things they're already successfully doing. But I heard a lot of support for the Praxis 2 bridge, and we have 4 out of 6 ad hoc committee members. So that would make us having a quorum if we wanted to take any action about the Praxis 2 bridge.
And if we voted on just that, that would be our only recommendation, or because there's something Anne said about the portfolio as a, as a, if you didn't do this to satisfaction, there are other things we could ask you to do to show evidence. And so I don't know if that
I
puts
wouldn't think it as our only option, because we still have
portfolio.
so much more to discuss. But if we can take this one off the table, knowing that, all right, we've agreed with this one method, and then continue to explore other alternative minimum content areas, assessments. That
Yeah, okay, I
Um,
understand.
I do have to run like right now to go pick
Okay.
up a child, so I'm not sure
Which
I can
case-
vote. Yeah, and I think I would love a little more conversation. I wonder if it's better to put forward more of the full menu as opposed to piecemeal, because that might make it hard for people to
Yeah.
wrap their heads around the whole picture.
Mhm.
But
All right.
I gotta run.
Bye. In which
Thank you.
case, is there any other things people want to discuss before we head out?
No, just thank you for putting it in this format with the summaries of each idea. That's very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I will continue to do that, Sarah. I have what Dr. Ritchie just sent me, so I'll put that in as number 5. And then I have more information from Kaylin, which I think goes into option 4, but we'll find out. All right.
Okay, great. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
See you again.
All right. So, Chloe, we might need to set up another meeting. Would you be able to do that first? I guess sometime before April
Are we
break?
still live?
Yeah,
You
let
wanna have
me
that
see.
discussion?
I'm gonna see if I can end the event, and then I think we can stay on.
Sure.